I sold my logistics company for $123 million and threw a party to mark the close. 30 people packed our house, champagne pyramids and a hired bartender. Clara's idea. Clara is my wife, Lydia's younger sister. All borrowed glamour, zero. Income and a talent for acting like money is a love language. I was by the mantel, half listening to my accountant recite tax codes when I saw it. A clear vial in Clara's hand, the kind that hides in a fist. She drifted to the bar, tipped the vial over the flute set on the cocktail napkin stamped, "Congratulations, Richard," and sailed toward me wearing her best hallmark smile. I took the glass. I didn't drink. When she turned to fetch her own, I set my flute down beside Evan, her boyfriend, a degenerate gambler in a borrowed blazer, who was nursing a beer and watching the good liquor like a stray eyeing steak. 5 minutes later, he lifted my champagne and drained it. The fall was cinematic. Confusion twisted to panic, then Evan crumpled, shaking, foaming, a ring of horrified guests around him. Clara wailed on cue. I didn't move. That drink was meant for me. The ER smelled like disinfectant and bad news. A gray-faced doctor finally said the quiet part out loud. Plant alkaloids, consistent with oleander. Lydia squeezed my arm, hard enough to leave half moons. Clara kept crying at the volume of a fire alarm and giving statements that said nothing. Marcus Hale, a retired detective and old friend, arrived, took one look at the room and murmured, "Her panic's rehearsed." He watched Clara the way a hawk watches a mouse. By dawn, Evan was stable but critical. I went home, poured a scotch, and made a list. Names, debts, timelines. 5 years of loans to Clara and Evan, groceries, rent, opportunities. 150 grand. Evan's betting had escalated. Clara's spending had too. Right. After I announced the sale. And there was Lydia's constant refrain about keeping family secure, always delivered through Clara's concern. I called my lawyer, Howard Crane, a man whose mahogany office smells like billable hours. "Criminal charges will be tough without a clean handoff," he said, "but we can fortress your money, new will, irrevocable trusts, competency eval, on record. And Richard, if poison fails, paper follows." He was right. 2 days later, Clara showed up with Lydia and a smile you could cut yourself on. They laid out a power of attorney that gave Clara the keys to my kingdom and a glossy brochure for Sunset Manor, luxury rest for the wealthy and inconvenient. "It's just a precaution," Clara purred. "You've been under stress." "I'll sleep on it," I said, and slid their papers into a folder that looked identical to the decoy set Howard had drafted. Authority over exactly one account, holding 1037ers. The unexpected ally arrived the next morning. Marjorie, Clara's mother, with no lipstick and a shaking teacup. "She's been talking about your money for months," Marjorie said. "Asking about your will, your health, medications. The night before the party she called, thrilled, said after tomorrow their problems would be solved. Richard, I think she meant to kill you. Will you say that to police?" Marjorie nodded. "I can't protect her from this." I hired Simone Vargo, a PI with the morals of a surgeon, sharp and strictly outcome-based. In 48 hours, she delivered a file that could sink a yacht. Clara with $68,000 in maxed cards, a condo refinanced to the studs and already late, Evan down 50 grand to a bookie whose collections involve power tools, and the crown jewel, a $750,000 life insurance policy on me, taken out 6 months prior, brokered through lies about being my caregiver, premiums paid with a credit card cash advance. Application date? 3 days after the sale news went public. "Timeline's your noose," Simone said. "Premeditation, motive, method." Clara and Evan came back to finalize paperwork. Evan was upright, pale, and jumpy. Clara was polished and hungry. I set out Howard's decoy POA. They leaned in. The doorbell rang. Detective Sarah Marlowe, financial crimes, steel hair, steel eyes, stepped in with 2 uniforms. "Mr. Halden, we have questions about a poisoning, a fraudulent insurance policy, and substantial gambling debts." The room froze. Evan processed it first. Confusion, then anger. "You gave me that champagne," he said to Clara, voice cracking, into adulthood. You used me. Ma'am, Marlowe said, flipping cuffs into her palm. Clara Grant, you're under arrest for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. An officer laid out photos of Clara near the bar, toxicology, reports, bank statements, and the policy packet with forged caregiver lines. Clara's protests died in the middle of a syllable. When they led her out, Lydia stared at me with wet eyes. Tell me this isn't true. I couldn't. The rest moved like a machine. Howard rebuilt my will. Charities first. A protected. Trust for Lydia, 0 for Clara. We documented my mental capacity within an inch of its life. Marcus stayed in the background, feeding the right facts to the right desks. Simone kept digging, Marjorie testified. Evan, facing accessory charges and broken kneecaps, flipped fast. 8 months later, Clara got 14 years. The judge's summary was dry as bone. Financial pressure does not excuse poisoning one's brother-in-law for profit. Evan got probation and community service. Justice is rarely poetic, but this came close. Lydia still lives with the wreckage of loving a sister who could do that. Therapy helps. So does time. Some ties shouldn't be repaired. I put cameras on the eaves, roses along the fence, and distance between my money and anyone who uses the word family like a crowbar. My niece Isabel called with news of med school, and I promised tuition. She's the one relative who never treated me like a walking ATM. On my birthday, I sat in the garden with a glass of Macallan, sunlight on the petals, and a faint hum from the security system. Survival, it turns out, is the sweetest toast. To Richard, the man who dodged poison and outlived the plot, to freedom.